The Season 3 premiere of Star vs. the Forces of Evil recently aired, and to be honest, I have mixed feelings. Now, I've been meaning to watch this 4-part episode ever since they announced it. I thought Season 2 of Star vs. the Forces of Evil ended really well. The season finale had great tension, a lot of emotion, nicely carried on several key story arcs, and had a more serious tone, and left a lot of unfinished business that needed to be resolved in future episodes. Which brings us to the Season 3 premiere, which, to be fair, when it came to continue what was left behind, it did a fine enough job, but the way they executed was what dragged these episodes down. Now let's first address what these episodes did right. For one, Star. Now, since I've never talked about Star Butterfly before, let me take advantage of this review to talk about her. I absolutely love her character. She's a very charming and hilarious character. She's fun, joyful, witty, and chaotic, but in a lovable way. In this 4-part episode, her joyful attitude was noticeably toned down, which I can appreciate given the things she was going through. Even then, she still managed to offer some lighting moments, which perfectly serve as a contrast to her mom's more serious attitude. I think the episodes that center around Star and her mom were the better ones. In their first and second episode, we got to witness Queen Butterfly's character being fleshed out by looking at her past and see how it influenced the way she behaves. We also got to meet Eclipsa, which was really cool, although a part of me was expecting her to be more terrifying, mostly because of this picture from the episode Into the Wand. I also really like when Star and Queen Butterfly decided to visit Buffrog, who was a character I grew very fond of over the course of the series. It was also really interesting seeing Buffrog and Queen Butterfly talk with each other, given how they brought up the tension between Mewni and monsters. The musical score here was incredible. Usually the music in Star vs. the Forces of Evil has this energetic, modernized, classic video game style to it, but in this episode they got to also play toned down and emotional scores, which really did help enhance the atmosphere in certain scenes. There was also this scene where Queen Butterfly sat down to have a conversation with Toffee, and they started playing this classic orchestral song, and it was really well composed. Now that we're on the subject of music, the show has a new outro, and I don't want to throw any wild accusations, but this is a little too similar to Steven Universe's outro. I mean, it's not noticeably similar, but there are little details about it that I can't help but wonder if it was a little bit inspired by Steven Universe. This premiere also had a lot of emotionally overwhelming moments. It's definitely the most tearjerker episode out of all of the Star vs. the Forces of Evil episodes. The scene where everyone thought Star died was definitely the best when it came to setting up a sad and tragic vibe. Speaking of that scene, there's a moment where Marco literally stabbed Toffee's heart with a fist punch. Now at the end of the day, that was completely meaningless given that Toffee was immortal at that point, but just the fact that Marco was so filled with anger that he even managed to pierce through someone's body shows just how angry Marco was. Now whether or not that was realistic is a bit of a different story. I'm aware that Marco knows karate and that Toffee had just recently regained his physical body, which probably would have taken a while for his body to be perfectly stable, but still, stabbing someone with a fist punch is a bit unrealistic. However, it was still a sweet moment. Speaking of which, this episode didn't put too much focus on Stark and Marco's little situation, which is something I can appreciate given that it didn't really have much of a place in this episode. Now before I start talking about the negatives, let me just address it. Even though I have mixed feelings towards this, I do still acknowledge that a lot of thought, care, and love was put into this premiere, and I do not in any way think this was a bad premiere or even mediocre. There are just a few things that made me enjoy this a lot less than I probably should have. When I first watched this, the first thing that left me a bit confused and disappointed was how it didn't turn out to be the product that was advertised to be. The first time I heard about this, I was told it was going to be an hour and 20 minutes long movie, similar to House of Blue and the premiere of Samurai Jack. However, this was actually more of a mini-series than a movie. In fact, if you're hoping to see this as a movie, I recommend you change your plans because you will be incredibly turned off by the pacing. I say this because the pacing in this mini-series, which is what I'm going to call it, was atrocious, constantly shifting from one side plot to the other. It actually started off pretty well with the first 2 episodes nicely resuming the events of season 2 finale, but then in episode 3 and 4 they wanted to set up the main conflict of the miniseries, but they dragged on for way too long. It really didn't help the fact that I was much less invested in Ludo and King Butterfly's respective side plots than Star and Queen Butterfly's side of the story. Sure, there were a few things worth appreciating from those side plots. I did enjoy King Butterfly's character arc throughout the entire miniseries, and I also enjoyed that brief moment where Ludo and Glossaryck interacted with each other. I think the whole Glossaryck being a lazy and casual magic instructor trope works a lot better on Ludo. I just personally think those specific episodes overstayed their welcome, but trust me, it wasn't just the third and fourth episode that ruined the pacing. Now, another kind of deceiving aspect of this miniseries was how it was advertised to be a battle-themed miniseries, but this was actually more of a race or a journey than a battle. There were barely any fight scenes, which is really not a good sign for a show like Star vs. the Forces of Evil. The closest we came to a fight scene was when Star turned into a yellow butterfly thing and destroyed Toffee, which was a beautiful moment by the way. The majority of the miniseries, however, was basically a journey to stop Ludo from ruling Mewni, and the thing is, even if you accept that and watch it for what it is, the miniseries only briefly showed us the process of Ludo taking over Mewni and gives more focus on him already being king. And while it is fun watching Ludo being in control, I would have been a lot more invested if I'd actually witnessed the process of him actually taking over Mewni. I find it odd how we get an episode where King Butterfly tries to stop a monster from destroying his village, which serves little importance to the main story, but we don't get an episode where Ludo brings Mewni down in details. Another thing that kinda disappointed me was how they handled Toffee. Now, Toffee is one of those characters where the less you see him, the more mysterious he becomes, which is what makes him a really cool villain, but there becomes a certain point where the show's attempt at keeping the mystery surrounding him starts to damage the potential. I really wish we had seen more of Ludo internally struggling with Toffee's alter ego inside his head. It would have been a lot more interesting seeing Ludo constantly switching from him to Toffee time and time again. We kind of saw that, but not really. Also, was I the only one who thought Toffee died prematurely? We finally get to see Toffee in his true body after so long, and then a few minutes later he dies. Again, wasted potential. Now I guess the big question is whether I thought this was a good or bad miniseries. Well, generally speaking, I thought the good outweighed the bad. I didn't even bring up the comedy, which was something that got even better when they introduced those three artists right around episode 6. The only complaint I might have with the comedy was how it didn't perfectly match the tone in certain scenes. And as a fan of this cartoon, I'm really glad I saw this miniseries, and it opened up even more questions regarding the future of the show, which leaves me even more hooked. I'm now more excited than ever to watch future Star vs. the Forces of Evil episodes, mainly because of Eclipsa. I just think this miniseries was poorly structured, which unfortunately made the viewing experience more off-putting than it probably should have. However, I'd still recommend watching Battle for Mewni. Just don't expect too much battle. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Bye for now. Wait, what happened to the members of the Magic High Commission?